to show you how to color your drawing in using some of Xara Designer Pro version 9's new features. So go on ahead, I'll catch up with you in a moment. To begin this month, go to xarazone.com/tutorials. Scroll down the page, click on the Downloads button to download this month's zip archive, unpack it on your system, and get ready to load it in Xara. Most all auto tracing software looks for edges where the color changes in the bitmap sample. All Xara's bitmap tracing utility does is produce closed, filled paths based on these color changes, piling the shapes one on top of the other. So when you draw something, scan it, and import it to Xara, the tracing program will produce different shapes based on whether you close a line you draw or not, like this. Imagine in this fantasy sequence that you're drawing and you're scanning and you're winding up with an auto trace in Xara. When you draw a circle like this and you don't close it, once it's auto traced after scanning, you wind up with two shapes, the background and the shape. Now let's try this again, but this time I'm going to close the circle. Okay, that's my drawing and that's my scan, and I've brought it into Xara and it's been auto-traced, and it produces three shapes: the background, the back, and the top shape. Remember this when you draw. Once you're happy with your cartoon and you've thoroughly erased all your pencil lines, it's off to the scanner. What you do is open the door, place your drawing on the platen face down. Make sure the edges are parallel to the platen, close the lid, and it's off to your scanning software. This is the scanning software to a Canon multifunction MP970. It's not a new machine, but your scanner interface should look like this. When you're offered cropping options, you probably want to crop fairly tight to your drawing. And as you can see here, the close-up of my options is I'm scanning at 300 dpi, and that'll result in a 14 meg file, which we can handle. And I'm doing this in color because I want to capture all the data of my pen and ink drawing. Now, if your scanning software offers brightness and contrast controls, you want to use them because the resulting files could look too dark or too light, and Xara won't trace them properly. So now that I'm all set, I'm going to scan, and this I think took like 2 minutes, and I'm editing this here. And when you're done, you usually have a choice of file format. I'm choosing TIFF over JPEG because JPEG is lossy compression and I don't want PDF. So I save the file to my hard disk, and once it's saved, what we do is we go to Xara. In a new document, what I'm doing is I'm dragging the TIFF file from a folder into the interface, into a new document. You can also press Ctrl-Alt-I to get the image in. You want to choose Utilities, Bitmap Tracer, and I've enlarged the box here so that you can see I'm choosing limited color, although grayscale will work also. What you want to do is get more smoothing so there's fewer control points, fairly good accuracy, final color tolerance, turn it up all the way. And this looks like the preview looks pretty accurate, and we click Insert. Now I'm going to move this group of shapes over, and as you can see, it's pretty darn close to the bitmap that I drew originally. So what I'm going to do here is delete the TIFF image, the imported TIFF image, and I'm going to open the page in Layer Gallery, and as you can see on Layer 1, a group of shapes, which you can see in wireframe view quality here. And what we want to do is I'm going to Control-click on that background piece, Control-click on it and press Backspace, and now what I have is the pair without the background shape. On the Page and Layout Gallery, I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to call this Coloring. Once I've labeled the layer, I'm going to pull it underneath Layer 1 so that everything I color is going to be behind the pair shapes. Now I'm choosing the Shape Painter tool, new to versions 8 and 9 of Xara Designer Pro and other programs. I've picked a nice green, and as you can see, because that shape I drew has some openings to it, there's nothing underneath. So I'm just painting away with a pear color. And as long as that shape that I've painted is selected, I can extend it, which I'm doing. And I'm doing this in a fairly hurried and sloppy fashion. But Okay, I'm gonna leave this color here for the moment and press Escape to deselect everything. Now I'm going to pick that green color and then drag this color editor color down to make a little darker one. And with the Shape Painter tool, I'm going to increase the size on the info bar. And what I'm doing is I'm shading. I'm shading with a darker color. Now this color may not seem dark enough to get a visible effect that I want, so as long as it's selected, I'll make it a little darker in the color editor. And then use Xara's feather feature to create kind of an airbrush. Now remember, whenever you want to start something new, press Escape. Now back in the color editor, I want to do some highlights, some golden color around the left edge so that the pear is colored, shaded from left to right. And again, with the feather option, I'm going to reduce the edge so it's soft. Let's deselect. And moving along, what I want to show you is I'm going to paint the hand here. However, what I've run into were a couple closed shapes. What you want to do in that case is to move up to the tracing layer and then just click on the object and then fill it. What I'm doing is I'm using the eyedropper tool there to match those colors. And as you can see, there's an awful lot of shapes on this layer 1, the tracing layer. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back down to the coloring layer. And part of this hand has no background. So what I'm going to do is, again, get the color editor right there. Choose a little darker shape and then shade the hand. Now that could be darker, so as long as it's selected, I'll make it just a little darker. There we go. And again, use feathering. And this is kind of a nice airbrush look. Now as you work your way around, I'm not going to do the entire pear here, but just some areas to watch out for and some novel things that you can do to correct stuff. Now, on the layer 1, the bitmap tracing layer, there's some trash. Okay, there's a white shape here above the background, and what I want to do is select that, hold Shift to additively select the black background shape, and then choose Arrange, Combine Shapes, Subtract Shapes. And now there's no longer a shape there. And if your trace is rough, and I do have some rough areas here, don't be afraid to use the Shape tool to edit these areas. Now, as I'm moving up to the stem, I think I'd like to try some gradients. Those are also nice airbrushy kind of things. So I've done a linear gradient here. I'm clicking on the Start Color control handle and picking a brown here. Now watch as I adjust this, and I'm trying to adjust the angle. As long as you have a nice gradient going, what you can do is press Ctrl-C to copy. And here's another shape that's on layer 1 that's white. And what you want to do is, after copying the image, press Ctrl-Shift-A to paste the attributes. Let's remember this, Ctrl-Shift-A. That just pastes the color of the shape that you copied. So here we go, copy and then paste. So that's an easy way to fill in a lot of these blanks. Moving over to the leaf area, an awful lot of these are closed shapes. They're white shapes above a black background. Now, I'd like to paint behind this, but I can't because there's white shapes, then black shapes. So what I'm going to do is hold Shift and click on an awful lot of these white guys here between my black scribbles. And I'm going to add them together. I'm going to use the Arrange menu command, Arrange, Combine Shapes, Add Shapes. Now, once I've done that, I want to hold Control here and then click on the black shape. The white shape and the black shape are selected. White's on top, black's on bottom. Subtract shapes. Now, apparently, I haven't made a change here, but as long as I'm on the coloring layer, watch this, okay? Those aren't white objects on top of black anymore. They're holes. And I'm free to color the pear. Now what I might want to do is add some more of these because there's an awful lot of shapes here. Hold Shift, click on them, and then add them. And again, once you have the white shape selected, you can add them together. and then hold Shift and click the black shape behind it and do subtract shapes. Once I've done that, I'm going to play around with this color a little bit, and I think actually a linear gradient would be fun here. So I'm doing that. Let me click the start point, and in the color editor, I'm going to pick something a little olive, and I'm going to make this color as it approaches the fold in the stem a little darker. And now that I've got that done, I've just been moving around. Now, moving ahead, back to the Shape Builder tool, on the info bar, you can change the roundness and angle the shape of the brush. And I thought this would be a nice approach to the scribble I have that represents the ground. And what I'm going to do is, this is the last used color attribute, and that was a linear gradient. So what I did was I chose brown, and what's new in feature 9 is that you can choose to replace both colors in a gradient, and that's what I did with the solid. I've put that to back, and that seems like a little too dark, so what I'm doing is I'm lightening the color now. And to continue, if you want to put a background on this pair, what you probably want to do is create a new layer and call this the white base coat. And what I'm doing and what you can do is put this layer beneath the coloring layer. So it's on the bottom. And now that you're working on this layer, you can use the shape tool, or I'm going to use the pen tool here, to create a silhouette around your entire drawing. And I'm going to do a little time lapse here, but basically you can see that I'm tracing around the edge of the drawing. It's complete, and what I'm going to do is I clicked on orange, and that shows you all the areas that I have not colored but should be white, so I clicked on white. What you've done is you've created a base coat that's going to protect your drawing from this new layer, which I'm going to call the background layer. And we're going to move that all the way down. And I'm going to try that again because I'm not very good at moving layers. So let's call this the background. Now that's behind the base color, and it's also behind the coloring layer. So now that it's behind everything, you're fairly free to draw any kind of background you like. Watch this, okay? I've got a rectangle, and that's a boring color, but as you can see, that base coat plus the coloring layer has protected the lines and has protected all the fills. So this drawing kind of operates as expected. I'm using a circular fill here to kind of highlight the top of the drawing. So I've got gold going to kind of a medium brown. And that's basically the way you color a cartoon in Xara, or at least one way, using the Shape Painter tool. Now, I'm going to hide the coloring layer, and I'm going to show you something else as a little additional treat. I've included in this document a bitmap image, and it's of bear skin. And what I'm doing, what you can do, is create a new layer. Put it beneath the layer 1 tracing layer. Now that you've got it there, use the Shape Builder tool, and color doesn't make any difference. Just fill in the pear. Okay, I'm making the shape of the Shape Painter nib round again because it was angled before. So I'm using a small tip to work around the finer areas, around the grin and stuff. And I'm going to get a larger tip now to fill in the rest. I'm just creating basically a shape of the pear. There's nothing tricky here. It's kind of actually fun to use the Shape Painter tool. It's like having a bitmap tool in a vector drawing program. Oh, there's one other thing I want to show you. I'm going to make a deliberate mistake here. Also, in versions 8 and 9, you have an eraser tool, and it will only erase the selected object. So that's pretty cool. Now, I'm going to take that selected shape, go to the Fill tool, and up on the info bar, I'm going to choose Bitmap. Now, of course, it goes to the default bitmap, and a striped pear looks stupid, but the pear skin, once you choose that, which is in the document, offers you yet another way to lay down some texture along with color. So it's a bitmap fill within a vector drawing. Now, you don't need to stop there. I'm going to shade by creating another shape here. And I'm going to call it green and get rid of the linear gradient through that attention box. With some stained glass transparency and a little bit of feathering. And let me reduce the opacity. As you can see, you can shade a bitmap fill with a vector fill. And that's digital cartooning this month. See you in the funny papers.